All right, welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. You know how this works by now. We take something interesting, something complex maybe, and we try to break it down into something a little bit easier to digest.
That's right, a deep dive.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're looking at the Monty Hall Problem. You know, that brain teaser about the game show with the doors and the goats. We actually found a really cool article about it by Vasudevin on Simplify Me and In.
Yeah, it's a classic probability puzzle.
Yeah.
Really exposes those gaps between our intuition and how the math actually plays out.
Right. Okay, so for anyone who needs a quick refresher, imagine you're on a game show. You got three doors in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Behind one door is this amazing prize, like a brand new car or something.
Trip to, I don't know, Hawaii.
Exactly, something awesome. But behind the other two doors, well, you get goats.
Not quite as exciting.
No, not so much. So you pick a door, any door. Let's say you go with door number one.
Okay.
Now here's the twist. The host, Monty Hall, he knows what's behind each door.
He always does.
Of course. And he opens one of the doors you didn't pick, revealing a goat. Always a goat.
Important detail, he always reveals a goat.
Yes, and then he asks, do you want to stick with your original choice or switch to the other closed door?
And that's where things get really interesting.
Because most people think, well, it's down to two doors now. It's a 50-50 shot. It doesn't matter if I switch or not.
Right.
Right.
It's the intuitive response. But as Vasudevin points out in the article, it's actually much better to switch.
Much better. Like how much better?
Switching doors actually doubles your chances of winning.
Whoa. Doubles. That seems wild. Why is that?
I know, it feels completely counterintuitive. But the math is there. Think of it this way. When you initially picked a door, you had a 1 in 3 chance of being right.
Right.
Which means there was a 2 in 3 chance that the prize was behind one of the other two doors.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
Now, when Monty opens a door to reveal a goat, he's not changing those initial probabilities. He's giving you additional information. Yeah, he's essentially concentrating that initial 2/3 probability, which was spread across two doors, onto the single remaining closed door.
So my initial choice still has that 1/3 chance, but the other closed door has absorbed the remaining 2/3.
You got it. Vasudevin actually uses a great analogy to make this clearer. Imagine 100 doors instead of 3.
100 doors.
Yeah, you pick one. Then Monty opens 98 other doors, all revealing goats.
Okay.
Would you stick with your original choice or switch to the one other door that's still closed?
I think it'd switch. I mean, the odds of my initial pick being right out of 100 doors are tiny.
Exactly. It feels much more obvious in that scenario because Monty is giving you so much information by revealing all those goats. That remaining closed door suddenly becomes super suspicious, right?
Yeah, like it's practically glowing with prize potential. Okay, so back to the three-door scenario. So the reason why it's not 50-50 is because Monty isn't just randomly opening a door.
Exactly. He's using his knowledge of where the prize is to guide his action.
Right. That makes sense. It's like if I flipped a coin, the odds are always 50-50 for heads or tails.
Yep. Each flip is independent.
But in the Monty Hall problem, it's different because Monty's action is directly tied to the outcome.
He's adding information to the equation, not just leaving things to random chance.
And the article on Simplify Me and by Vasudevin has some really interesting examples of this, computed examples, right?
It breaks it down with different scenarios.
Yeah.
It shows that if you always stick with your initial choice, you only win about 1/3 of the time.
Which matches that initial 1/3 probability.
Exactly. But if you switch, you win about 2/3 of the time.
So switching really does double your chances. Okay, I think I'm finally getting it. The math makes sense, even if it feels weird. But, this all seems very theoretical. Like, it's cool, but why should I actually care about this Monty Hall thing?
Well, the article actually addresses that. It asks, everything is wonderful and dandy, so why should I care?
Yeah.
It's a good question. We're not all on game shows.
Right, exactly. I'm not going to be picking between doors with goats behind them anytime soon, hopefully.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But the point is, this isn't just about game shows. It's about how we make decisions in real life when new information comes up.
Okay.
The article actually uses pretty strong language. It says that being stubborn and sticking with your initial decision, even when there's new evidence suggesting you should change, is, well, dumb.
Wow. Okay, straight to the point.
But it makes sense when you think about it. Let's say you're running a business, right? You've got this big plan, all based on your current understanding of the market.
Okay. Following.
But then something changes. A new competitor pops up, maybe, or there's some new technology that throws everything off. Should you just stick to the original plan? Because that's what you decided on at the beginning.
I guess not. You got to adapt. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where the Monty Hall problem comes in. It's like, are you going to stick with your initial door, or are you going to be smart and switch to a new strategy based on the new information you have?
So the takeaway is be flexible. Be open to changing your mind when the situation calls for it. Don't be stubborn just for the sake of it.
Yeah. And the article even talks about this in terms of careers. Like maybe you start a new job and at first you think it's great, but then over time you get more information and you realize it's maybe not the right fit anymore.
Yeah.
The Monty Hall principle suggests that it's totally okay to switch doors in that situation, to look for a different job that's a better match for what you know now. You're not obligated to stay just because that was your first
So
choice.
basically, the Monty Hall problem is kind of a life lesson in disguise. It's about being open to new information and changing our minds when it makes sense.
That's a great way to
And
put it.
it's not just about being open to changing our minds, but actually, statistically, it's the better thing to do.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So just to solidify this a little more, can we summarize the key takeaways from this deep dive into the Monty Hall problem?
Sure. I think the big one is that understanding even basic probability can really help us make better decisions in all areas of our
Not
lives.
just on game shows, but in business, our careers, our personal lives.
Exactly. And for businesses specifically, I think the takeaway is that being data-driven is crucial. Don't just go with your gut all the time. Look at the numbers, analyze the situation, and be ready to adapt when the information changes.
Solid advice.
And, the article mentions that this whole thing actually ties into some even more complex probability concepts, like Bayes' theorem.
Oh yeah, Bayes' theorem. That's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
Definitely. Maybe we'll tackle that one next
For
time.
sure. So to wrap up this deep dive, inspired by Vasudevan's article on Simplify Me, it seems like the main message is don't be afraid to switch. Be open to new information and adjust your course accordingly.
It's not about being indecisive. It's about making informed
And
choices.
actually, statistically speaking, switching is often the smarter choice. Who knew?
Right. And as a final thought for our listeners out there, think about your own lives. Are there any areas where you might be clinging to an initial door, so to speak, even though new evidence suggests there might be a better option out
What
there?
information would it take for you to consider making a switch?
Something to ponder.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Hopefully, you've learned something new or at least had your mind bend a little bit.
Always a good thing.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and don't be afraid to switch those doors when the opportunity arises.